Let me start by asking you, you need to be fabulously rich like Brian Johnson to be able to do biohacking.
But you don't need to be as rich and famous as Brian Johnson.
Do I need a medical degree or a stats degree to biohack?
No, not necessarily. I think you do need to have some good physicians that you know. I think that's an important thing because you don't want to do things that are, that are very experimental, that you have no understanding of the basics. But I think the purpose of biohacking is more to increase your health span, which basically means that you want to be healthy, right? So I know that I'm not someone who's going to live forever, but I want to make sure that the time I'm living, I can do my own things. I don't become a burden to someone.
Hello and welcome. You're watching the Longevity Shot. I'm Kavita Krishnan, and this is the show where we have conversations that help us live healthier for longer. So today we'll find out what exactly is biohacking. Yes, that word that has been trending ever since Brian Johnson came to India. So we will hear from our expert Anuradha Acharya, who will tell us all about biohacking, what works, what doesn't work, and how you can biohack too. But before we get to that, I suggest you subscribe to the Never Too Late channel, especially if you're looking for India focused content and resources on longevity, because you're going to see a lot of that right here. So, a bit about Anu. Now, those of you who follow us have already seen her here before. It was her team at Map My Genome that identified the longevity gene in Indians. Now, her company does exactly what the name says. It maps your DNA, it draws insights from it, and it shows you how you can use it to optimize your health. So, yes, Anu is the best person to show us how to biohack. Welcome to the show, Anu. Let me start by asking you, you need to be fabulously rich like Brian Johnson to be able to do biohacking.
First of all, thanks, Kavita. It's great to be back on your podcast. But you don't need to be as rich and famous as Brian Johnson. I think biohacking is simply a term that means that you are trying to understand your body and you're trying to find better ways to hack your health, right? In some ways, that you are trying to understand what works, what doesn't work for you. So I don't think you need to be there, but it's great to have someone like him who sort of has created that conversation and has brought it to everybody's attention, right? So I think I'm thankful to him for that. But
So
you
you
don't
do
need
it as
to
well.
spend $2 million a year.
So you biohack as well.
I do. I mean, I do, but I don't do I mean, I don't do as many crazy things. I think I do a few things, and I think for most people, I think they don't even start with the basics, right? Which would be like, how do you understand? One is to understand your genetic makeup. That sort of helps you understand your wiring, right? Because that's what you were born with. That's what came in your genetic lottery. So that's one part of it. But I've also been measuring a lot of my blood reports, and not just measuring. I think it is also about analysis of that report, right? I think one of my doctors many years ago, he told me that I was taking my dad to him to show for all his ailments. This is more than 10 years ago, I think about 15, 20 years ago. And I think the first thing he said was, you bring me all his reports from all the time that you can remember. And my dad used to be pretty good at putting all these reports. So I saw that he studied them in great amount of detail. Right. So he said that the one thing that is most essential is not what your biomarkers say today, right? I think that's important. But he said what is more important, Dr. Raju said, was most important was to understand what has happened over the last few years, right? What is going on? What's your trend? What is, how has it increased or decreased? Because that helps to understand the root cause of a problem. It helps you to understand what works, what doesn't work.
We started quite early, but
Quite
which brings me to a couple of other quick questions that I want to ask you before we get into the discussion. Now, drawing from what you just told me, do I need a medical degree or a stats degree to biohack?
No, not necessarily. I think you do need to have some good physicians that you know. I think that's an important thing because you don't want to do things that are, that are very experimental, that you have no understanding of the basics. But I think if you start with like just basic information, I think you do an executive health checkup and you can add some more additional blood tests. I think you are not really doing anything experiments on yourself at that point of time, right? So that is okay. I think in India, I think we are very lucky that we can actually get access to a lot of blood tests at our homes. So I think that's a great way to start off with, right? So just basic getting your understanding what's going on with your blood work over the last few years, or if you're starting today, then start making sure that you actually have that understanding of what is going on with your blood work. So I don't think you need to have a medical degree to do that, but it was always good to know a good doctor who you can actually reach out to, because many times you don't understand fully. And while there is chat gpt and there are many such options to do, I think sometimes it's very helpful to understand from an expert what this actually means. So I go to a few doctors myself to understand, and they're quite happy that I maintain all of these detailed information. So I have both my GP as well as a cardiologist that I talk to on a quite a frequent basis to understand what does this mean, right? And while it might not be something that you're immediately treating, I think it's helpful to understand what's going on and what's going on in your gut. So there are many pieces to that information. And I think everybody can do some amount of biohacking. I think, but when you are going towards more and more experimental areas, I would strictly advise precaution, because it's not
You
something
said experimental, and
yeah.
I want to ask you the one that is most associated with biohacking, which is plasma transfusions. Do you need to do that? Do you need to get those stem cell implants and all of that done?
I don't think so. And I don't know if they work also. But I think I think it's an interesting concept, right? And I think I would wait for some more time to see if these are actually, they actually work for everybody. And then we can see if it's something I want to do at that point of time, right?
Essentially, this is coming from a woman who lives, breathes, and eats science all day. And essentially, what you're telling us is biohacking is great. There are some very simple ways of doing it, and Anu will take us through it. But as she said, this is something where you need to proceed with caution. And please, please, please get some expert help, because it's not something that all of us can manage on our own. I mean, even she is going to experts, like she pointed out. But before we move on, Anu, is it life extending? I mean, that is a primary reason why people do biohacking.
So I think the main reason is more than just extension. I think that everybody can go to a hospital and make sure that you live longer than than maybe your previous generation did. But I think the purpose of biohacking is more to increase your health span, which basically means that you want to be healthy, right? So I know that I'm not someone who's going to live forever, but I want to make sure that the time I'm living, I can do my own things. I don't become a burden to someone, right? So I think, as long as you are healthy, you can do the things you want to do. Even when you are, let's say, if you are at 80 or 90, if you can be healthy and you can, do all your stuff by yourself, not dependent on anyone, I think that's the purpose, right? More than saying, can I live to 200 years or 150 years or 120 years, right? 120 is more the year that many people are looking at. And I think we have met people who have, there was some yoga guru who we included in our study who is 126, or at least that's what he said. So it's definitely a possibility. You need to have the genes right. You need to have all the other pieces right to be able to live to that much, to that age. But I think everybody can at least get benefit of living healthier for longer, right? So at least 10-15 years of your life, you'll be able to actually make a huge difference by even doing some of the simplest things possible. And I think that's what people need to understand, that biohacking can be very interesting. You can do a lot of stuff. You can understand your age of different organs. You can do a lot of information that you can gather. But I think some basic things that everybody can do can actually already extend your life or extend your healthy life by several years. And I think people have started to understand that.
Right. So let's start at the very beginning in that case. You did mention a bit about it, but explain to us, what is biohacking?
So I was I think we started off saying that, can we do just first a basic genetic analysis? You get that information going. The second part is you can do your blood reports, your basic, information, some, if for instance, you have a history of heart disease in your family, or you have a genetic propensity towards any of those, I think you need to monitor some of them more carefully than, and sometimes even do more advanced tests in that space. Similarly, I think that goes for cancer, for diabetes, and many other. So you can start to understand what is your genetic predisposition, what's your history, and what have you been eating, right? So food is very important, what you're eating. Your genetic predisposition is important to understand, because you can now use that information to change the way you eat. You can use that information to change the way you exercise. So that is what I would say as the basic things that you can do just by understanding your genetic predisposition and also understanding what your current blood work looks like. The other thing that we can also understand, which is now becoming very popular, is also the gut microbiome, right? So earlier we could sequence it, but we didn't really understand every parts of the disease well enough. But now you can sequence it, understand the good bacteria, the bad bacteria, and then be able to find ways to be able to devise strategies to make your gut more healthier and remove any pathogenic bacteria if that will be there. So I think those are easy things to figure out, right? Most biohackers, I think they read enough, they've read many books, but it's not necessary you need to know all of that. I think what is important is once you do some of these tests, you understand from an expert what next, right? What is the next step that you need to do? And with that, you get certain guidance in terms of changes in your life, in your diet, in your nutrition, and also how you measure. Because a lot of times when you measure, you are able to act upon it, right? So I think these are some of the more common things that you can do. You know, measuring your steps, your heart rate variability, your stress, and all of that. And I think the good thing is today you are able to do things in real time as well, right? So a lot of the rings and others will actually tell you, okay, you need to meditate now, right? And earlier people would be like, yeah, whatever, meditation, but it's actually does work incredibly well, right? So I think mindfulness is something, being aware really helps you to actually be, it changes your mental health, but also physical health.
If you're starting from zero, what would you say are the 4 or 5 steps that they need to, take to actually get started in biohacking?
So of course, the first thing I would do is to understand my genetic predisposition, because that really helps in saying, okay, what should I really be focused on? So I think your blood test, your basic, the 1,000 rupee blood test might also be fine for average, but you will miss out on a lot of things, right? So if you understand your genetic predispositions, then it's like saying, okay, you know where the possible challenges may come, and therefore you include that in your blood tests.
So when you say genetic predisposition, do I need to go for genome testing, or like you said in the beginning, you understood from your father's genetic history what you could be predisposed to? Is that also enough to begin with?
So that was definitely, it helps in knowing your family history. But let's say many times we don't know the whole family history, right? In fact, I remember when we first started doing our genome patri testing in 2012, 13, my dad then came out with a lot of information that we were like, oh. I said, how come I have a risk for, X or Y? And then he's like, yeah, my uncle had, or my father had, or something like that, right? So sometimes that discussion never comes about. Right? We all know that, let's say somebody had cancer, we would have heard of it. Diabetes, you would have heard of it. But you might not have heard some of the other things that maybe run in families, right? So it's important to just get that, and if you don't have access to a genome test, then or you don't want to spend on that, that's fine. Then at least get a minimum understanding of what
So how much does it cost? How much does a genome test
now?
cost?
I think between 5 to 8,000 rupees is what it costs. So and you're doing it once in your lifetime. You don't have to keep repeating it. So I think it's important to understand that, because it helps you create a baseline. Once you created a baseline, you're not doing that every year, right? But now what you can do is you can now tailor your blood test to sort of include those that you may be at risk for, right?
So like take some extra tests for heart if you have a risk for heart disease. That's what you said.
And you would do, let's say, if let's say you had a risk for coronary artery disease, for instance, right? You also might want to do like a CT, like a calcium score or a CT angio, just to, if you are over, let's say 40, 45, right? Things like that. So there are many things that you can do, which are more preventative.
So this is something your regular physician can tell you, which are the
Yes,
extra tests that
absolutely.
you should be getting done and help you also track it, right?
Yeah. So you have to first, either you go to a physician, they will tell you that, you should probably get these done. And I think today it's available in pretty much every diagnostic company that is there. At least in the major metros, I think it's very easy to get access to any of these tests that are there. Right. So you can do some of these tests. There are guidelines in terms of when you should do other things like endoscopy and others that you can also do. But I would first start with a basic, like once in a lifetime, you figure out what your genetic predisposition is. You add to that then your blood test. You tweak that a little bit from what you might have normally done in the past. So let's say earlier you only did something that was part of your corporate health checkup, for instance, right? Now you might want to add a few tests to that. For instance, you might want to check, especially if you're a woman who's in the perimenopause or menopause age, then you might want to add things like your hormones, and you want to understand what's going on with your calcium, magnesium, and many of those other tests that are there, right? So there are, depending on who you are and what your needs are, you want to tweak that blood tests. And that helps you in sort of saying what is important for you at that point of time. So once you've gotten that, the second thing is then that how do you make sure that you are eating well, your exercise, and I think sleep, stress, these are the most important things. But some things you might not get from any of those. Then maybe you need to do supplementation of that, or you might need to do complete changes in your lifestyle, like you mentioned intermittent fasting in the beginning, or it could be other such things that you might want to make changes in. So I think those would be incremental or based on what is going on with your health parameters to be able to then make those changes.
Right. You also mentioned the use of wearables. Now, I know that is one of the, easy ways, and a lot of people use that as an entry point into biohacking. So,
Yeah, so I would say that, what I do is I get up in the morning. I first think of how I'm feeling, how if was my night good or not, and then I check the data. Right. For me, it is more about checking if it is captured it accurately or not. For some people, I think it becomes like you mentioned, the tech is becoming a problem. So some people get up and they say, my sleep was so bad, and then they start feeling bad about it, right? So that becomes an issue, right? So for me, it would be about questioning that if, let's say, I felt I had a good night's sleep, but the data was not correct, like it showed that then I would say that, did I really get up in the night, or was I really that, and what caused that problem, right? So it is more about saying, can I use this as a tool of measurement and self-reflection, rather than saying, getting anxious about this thing, right? Because it shouldn't say how you should feel. It should say that, okay, you've had this, you slept, you got up, you felt good, and you can see that, okay, what did you do? If you put notes on your, app, that will tell you that, okay, this is what you did. I ate at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, versus if you went out for a party and you had a late night snack, you will see a difference in terms of your sleep quality and all of that. So I think those are the kind of things that people get insights, and that induces behavior change, right? So I know, for instance, for different people, it'll be different things. But I know that whenever I start going on to the wrong end of, and I know I have a risk for diabetes, I'll immediately get a glucose monitor, and people keep asking me, are you diabetic? Why are you doing this? And I keep telling them that for me, this is a behavior change, um, you know, way of making sure that I'm not going on the wrong side, right? The moment I put a CGM, I know that for those 2 weeks, I hate seeing those spikes. So you will, and therefore you will actually change
so
some of that.
mindful.
Yeah. So I think that's what I feel that it's useful for. It is not something that I would use as a medical grade data, but it's something that I use as a trend analysis, right? So I was telling you in the beginning that, when you're looking at something, you're looking at trends. I think what a lot of the variables are doing is it's giving you good information in terms of your trends. It is not something that you use as a substitute for saying, do I need to get a blood test done, for instance, right? It's not something that you use as a medical grade information, because you're not using it to treat anything. You're using it to change your own lifestyle. So I think that's what I would do. That I would use
So
that
to
data
use a
more.
corollary in that case, would you then say that it is like checking the NAV of your mutual fund investments? You should
Correct.
not be checking it every day and getting a heart attack every time the market crashes. You should check it over 15 days or a month's time.
See what is
That would
going
be
on with
the trend.
as a trend. Yeah.
Now, the other thing that we keep hearing about are these smart drugs, or what is also what the scientific community calls nootropics. So what are these, and should we be taking these?
So I think I would be a little bit careful with some of these drugs, because for even with supplements, I would be a little bit careful, right? Because there are known to have, some of them are known to have some side effects, and you might be one of those statistics. So you don't want to be caught in that, right? So let's start with like simple things, just supplementation. People are taking supplements, like people are actually showing off that they're taking 167 supplements or 170 supplements and things like that. Now that can really cause damage to your liver, your kidney, and all of that. So I think, I would, if I was taking that many supplements, I would really be worried about, some of those aspects of it. So you would need to make sure that you're constantly then checking your blood parameters to ensure that whatever you're taking is not really harming you, right? Even things like, I think there have been many Ayurveda medicines as well, right? Some of them are working fantastic for most people, but you might be one of those where it might cause a problem. So you want to make sure that if you are experimenting or you're adding a lot of these, supplements and drugs, that you understand that. The second thing is, some of these, for instance, some of these drugs do have a pharmacogenomic component, which basically means that not everybody can react well to those particular drugs in the same way that others will. So I think it's important to understand that. And with drugs, I think people forget that it's not just that one drug suits everybody. It's a drug, gene, drug, food, drug, many things, right? So it's not as simple as saying, fine, my favorite influencer took it, and therefore I need to also start taking all these medications. That is an important thing. But the part which is like the drugs that are now saying, whether you're looking at peptides or you're looking at, rapamycin, which is known to have some age extending possibilities, or you're looking at metformin, all of them have, are likely to work for some and not work for the other.
You
Right?
also have some other class of drugs like NAD boosters. You have
Correct.
your regular supplements like magnesium, etc., which again a lot of people are taking nowadays. So should you be taking this without speaking to a doctor? Are these safe?
I think magnesium is relatively, I think, safe, but there are many kinds of magnesium, and I think depending on what you need, you would take that. Right? That would be one. So magnesium is one. NAD, there is mixed reaction. I think NMN and NAD, I think, are still not yet completely proven, right? So I think I do take it, but I would say that I haven't yet seen like, there's no significant change in terms of what is going on, even though from a theoretical standpoint, it sounds like a good, because it's a starting molecule for a lot of your processes, molecular processes. So it sounds good, but how it actually works is a different thing. So it's something that I'm experimenting, not advising everybody to do it. But magnesium I do take, but I also check my magnesium levels. It's not low, so I don't like overdose on magnesium like some people do. So you can look at your calcium levels, your magnesium levels, your zinc levels, and you can also look at your other like heavy metals like your arsenic and lead. I mean, some of those different levels of heavy metals as well, right? Because you want to make sure that any of the things that you're taking is not actually causing an increase in some of those parameters as well.
Right.
So,
And again, like you said, a physician should be able to guide you on that.
exactly.
Now, recently there
Functional
was.
medicine, so those doctors are called functional medicine doctors. And they are looking at your whole body as not necessarily as saying that, do I go only to a cardiologist or go to a functional medicine? So I also consult sometimes a functional medicine doctor, and they are the ones that are looking at the holistic view of what is going on in terms of your blood parameters. What should you be looking at? I mean, things that we are just discussing, but I think they'll be able to guide an individual for specific cases of what needs to be done.
But how often do you need to get your blood work done in that case? I mean, you said you do it very often, but for people who are starting out,
So I think at least once a year they should do it. And then depending on, like, sometimes, for instance, I will check my cholesterol and my HbA1c and all a little bit more frequently because I'm now 53. I want to make sure that, you know, I do it once in 3 months or 6 months at least minimum. My aim is to get it every 3 months, but maybe I sometimes get a little bit here or there. Right? So it's important to be able to do that so that you tune yourself well on the blood work. If I have a problem, then I do it more often. I'll make sure that I make sure that I will check it more often and ensure that I then balance it out with something. So I think that would be the purpose. But most people don't even do it once a year. That's the reality.
that's
right?
it.
And I think we want to get people to at least understand that once in a year, at least get your basic blood work done. It really helps in, giving you a reality check on what's going on. Many people think that by not knowing, they'll be able to solve the problem, but it doesn't work like that. I think it does come back. Even a small ache or pain can sometimes come back in a form. So people need to understand that, just by not doing some of these tests, you are not solving a problem. You are, in fact,
Postponing
making
a
it worse.
problem.
Yeah, and making it worse, right? Because if you know it early enough, you can catch it and solve for it. So I think that would be the purpose for most biohacking, that you are able to proactively counter some of these steps. But in some cases, you might at least help in delaying some of what might be an inevitable for some of us, right? So I think that's something that you want to make sure that, it's not that you can prevent everything, but at least you can prolong the possibility of some disease or anything else that is coming to you. And I think we didn't mention rapamycin, which is another big drug that I think is talked about a lot in the longevity space. I think in humans, it's mostly a lot of the biohackers who have been doing it. And while there have been some promising studies, I think it's not yet at a point where anybody should just take it like you take a B12 or a D3. I think you need to make sure that this is something that you are taking under advice of a doctor who understand what it can do to your internal organs, right? So I think those are the kind of things that I would say some of these newer drugs that are there, that you are a little bit careful about how you take these, because everybody responds differently. And
Right.
therefore,
Now talk about nutrigenomics. Now I know that you also work in that field. Your company does provide services. So what is nutrigenomics?
so nutrigenomics basically helps you to understand, as part of, let's say, any genetic test that you're doing, you can understand how your body actually metabolizes fat, carbohydrate, proteins, and so on. That could be one. The second thing could be vitamins, right? Your B12, B9, B6, and D. So you can understand what is going on with that. The other aspect of nutrigenomics is your food intolerances, right? So sometimes you might have an intolerance, like a lactose intolerance, which basically means that maybe, the milk that you're drinking in your coffee or tea could actually be causing you a lot of indigestion or just other issues that you are not able to explain, right? So it might not be a necessarily a like a diabetes or anything else, but it is something that is causing you a problem. It's an intolerance that you have. And I think you can understand that with the genetic test. And you can then substitute it with, let's say, almond milk or any other milk if you need to have milk. Right?
But it is not just identifying what you're allergic to or what food causes you discomfort, right?
It's much more. It's also about how your body metabolizes a fat, for instance, or a carb or others. So, for instance, I think earlier, a lot of the nutritionists used to give you a one size fits all diet, right? Like if you are a 40-year-old woman, then you do A, B, C, D, and E, right? But now I think what we are seeing is once people understand how your body actually metabolizes certain fats and proteins and all of that, your diet can be tailored towards that. Your supplements can be tailored towards where you might actually be having a deficiency. Or even foods that you want to add in there will be based on that. So I think now you can understand what you need to change to be able to make sure that you can actually eat a healthier meal. So it is more personalized now. So many nutritionists have started using nutrigenomics to now say, okay, how do I actually tailor this for that individual? So that I don't give the same meal plan for everybody. And I think that's what a lot of them are now doing.
Apart from the regular blood work, how can we use blood-based testing to biohack?
So I would use things like there are some, like I was mentioning, there are, you can do a basic blood work, or you can do understanding your minerals and all of that, because that can help in saying, okay, do I really need this supplement or not? That could be one. The second could be to understand things like your APOB, which is a cardiac biomarker that is there. You can look at other parameters that can help you, there are many tests, for instance, that if you have a risk for, let's say, cardiac disease, then you might want to do things like troponin and various other things, depending on where you are. So I think for each person, you can now personalize and understand, what do I need to know from this, and what am I using it for actually living longer? Right? So I would, I would hope at least that people do the basic blood work, and then you can go into details. Like you can understand your specific vitamins, minerals. You can look at your hormone levels, because that's very essential in terms of understanding, like cortisol is an important aspect of what is going on in terms of stress, right? Or your estrogen and progesterone levels, because those are also linked to your sleep and other such factors. So especially for women who are, let's say 45 and above, I think, you will go through a lot of hormonal changes, and that can cause many actual physical health and mental health problems at that point of time. So you want to make sure that either you understand whether you need a hormone replacement therapy, or you want to make sure that you're doing things that can reduce like cortisol, or you're eating so that you can increase some of the levels that are there, right? So I think those are all things that today I think are quite well accepted, and has made a difference in many people's lives. But again, I wouldn't just go and, you can't just go and get a hormone replacement therapy just like that. You need to go to a gynecologist and make sure that you are getting those that you need at that point of time. So I think those are also huge influence in terms of your quality of life as well.
Now, Anu, what I'm hearing of in the last, say, half an hour of our conversation is a lot about, testing and optimizing and going to a doctor and getting things done, etc., etc. It sounds like a lot of work. Is it also fun?
I mean, if you enjoy it, it's fun. Like, it's not that you're doing it every day. It's because you're condensing all that information in one half an hour. It sounds like a lot of work, but it's not, right? So for instance, what we have done is you have a AI health coach. You can upload your blood data. You can upload your microbiome. You can upload your genetic information, and you can get like an age. So it's saying one thing that sort of puts all these pieces together is your biological age, right? So you put that together, and now you make it fun. So for instance, staying in the sunlight is a good source of that's very good for you, right? So you can see, if you want to go do gardening, the sunlight, you can just add that, and it makes it easy for you to be able to say, okay, did I reach out to a friend? Because social behavior is also very important in terms of how you look at longevity, right? So those are things that are there as part of the app that allow you to be able to basically make the whole check mark of what is important in longevity, whether it is your step count, and all of those can be very social activities as well, right? So I think today we are seeing a lot of companies do that. You're seeing a lot of friends circles that have sort of said that we will compete in terms of how many steps you are doing, or you're competing in terms of just looking at heart rate variability or otherwise. So you can make it fun. I mean, I find it a lot of fun. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing it. I don't do anything that I don't find fun. But at least for everyone else, I think minimum information. Do it with people. I think it really helps in making it a more fun activity, right? So if you have a partner or a colleague that is willing to do it with you, it can be a lot of fun. Because I think at least in my case, I love competition. Right.
Who
So
doesn't?
who doesn't, right?
Who
Like, so
doesn't?
it
Yeah.
really helps, right? When your friend is doing it, it sort of encourages you to say that, okay, if I've done only 6,000 steps today, maybe I need to walk a little bit
Up
more.
it a little. Yeah. But then, since you're talking fun, let's look at some of the biohacks that start trending. And a lot of what we are getting about biohacks nowadays are through social media, of course. So let's talk about some of them. Like, for instance, there's this thing that suddenly everybody is doing, bullet coffee. Does it help? Have you tried?
I have. I have tried it. I've tried it both with ghee and this thing, and I've tried it with MCT oil. But nowadays, most of the time, I don't. Right? But it's a fun way of. For me, it was very useful when I was trying to get to a point of doing intermittent fasting. So it really helped in not so much. I don't know if it helped so much in it said mental clarity and all of that. But I think for me, it was more about it helps in suppressing that need for going back and having breakfast at that point of time. Right?
That is something I would not do. I am a coffee purist. I've stayed away from all of these. But, other things like light therapy.
Yeah, I think it is the best light therapy is sunlight.
Hmm.
Uh, but if you are unable to get to that, I think there is some infrared that is showing to have some positive effects. I know that my dad used to experiment with infrared many years ago, and he was a physicist. But we have just ordered our infrared lamps. We are yet to, I can't comment on it in terms of whether it works or not. But I think there is some interesting research. I wouldn't recommend it for everyone, but it is something that is an experimental thing to be done, right? So I have ordered it, not so much to say that everybody should do it, but more it is for my own curiosity, I would say, to see if it actually.
What about cold showers and cold plunges?
I think those work, right? There is if you do like really cold and really hot, your body can, your heart rate changes. If you're using even like a CGM, you can see that after your a hot shower or a cold shower, you can see a difference in terms of your glucose spikes and so on. So I think those are definitely are things that can be done, and I think we've seen athletes do that, ice baths and then also otherwise, I think those really help both in terms of your muscle recovery and also in terms of just changing your how your heart is functioning and so on. So I would say it definitely works. Now, whether everybody wants to get into a like a what is that called, the cryo chambers, I think that's a luxury. But I think at least what we can do in our own houses is if you can at least try both a cold, like a hot shower, and I do steam as well. But you can do a hot shower followed with a cold shower for a short period of time, and I think that can be helpful for a lot of people.
Couple of other things that are now coming into routine life from athletes, from athletics. One, of course, we discussed supplements, but I wanted to ask you about micro dosing, which again is becoming very popular now.
Yeah, so there've been a lot of, I haven't tried any of the ketamines or the many other things that people are trying, or even I think I spent time in Vancouver, so there are a lot of those activities that have a lot of those microdosing is going on over there as well, right? Since I haven't personally experimented with it myself, I can't really say, but I do know some people who have, and they claim it has positive effects. But I haven't done it myself, so I can't. I
But
can't say.
I mean, this is essentially microdosing is cutting a tablet into small pieces and taking small doses of it. Would you recommend doing something like this without,
I
speaking to
mean, I've
medical
heard
professionals?
from actual medical doctors on that they have experimented on themselves. So I'm okay with that because I think they know
Yeah.
hopefully what they are doing. I wouldn't recommend it to everybody. I think you need to have some guidance in terms of why. First question is, why are you doing it? And the second is that what are you doing? Because there are many kinds of microdosing that people are experimenting with. Some of them can be maybe beneficial, especially they say for things like trauma or all of that, I think there are some drugs that have been found to be helpful. So again, I would say that should be something that should be used by a licensed medical practitioner, not something that you just go and do it yourself, right? And so I wouldn't do it on myself without actually talking to somebody and first ensuring that I want to try it for the first, that would be the first thing. The second thing is that is it something that will work? So I would look at first, see if there are any genetic, possible reactions. I would also see if there's any study that was done to see if there's any of the food that might interfere.
Mindfulness, there's an entire industry that's now built up around it. I know you do tai chi, like you just told me some time back, but mindfulness per se, journaling, drawing, a lot of the other things that people do, does it really help? Neuroplasticity, which people are experimenting with, do these things really help?
I think it totally does. Now, how you do it is up to you. You can do yoga, you can do Tai Chi is my new experiment. So I wouldn't say I do it regularly, but it's something that I'm trying recently. But it's also a form of, I love the movements and it sort of combines two activities for me in some form. So I think it's great. Now, if you are looking at things like your heart rate variability and you're looking at just your heart rate and others, you find that, deep breaths can actually truly change not just your mental health, but your physical health as well, right? So I think that is a proven fact. I think we've also seen that, there have been a lot of gene expression studies done on for people who are doing meditation and mindfulness, and they found a very positive outcome at it. So by gene expression, essentially you're saying that you are born with the same genes, but your genes, how they express, can be changed with lifestyle, right? So when you're doing a gene expression study, you can see if based on your like meditation and yoga or whatever you're doing, that can actually change that whole expression. So I think those are studies that have been published and have shown very positive outcomes. And it's something I totally believe in. I think if you can do mindfulness in any form, I think that can make a huge difference for anybody. And I know that in the beginning, people would be like, yeah, what, it doesn't sound, but it does make a big difference. In fact, Tai Chi was also, some of the things look very simple till you actually start doing them properly, and then you realize that it can actually make a change to your body, right? So I think those are things that we are seeing. Same with yoga, right? Like I think you have pranayam of different kinds. People who practice it regularly have seen a big change in their physical health and mental health, right? So I think we shouldn't undermine the power of our own breath because it's, while it's simple, it's very powerful. It
What
can be
about
sometimes more powerful than medicines. So
medicines? What about running a marathon? A lot of people think it's the easiest way to start biohacking, and it's also become very fashionable of late.
So I would first say I have, for instance, the sprint genes. I don't have the marathon. Like my genetic makeup is not like that. And actually, when I start running, I don't like running for long time just by myself. I can do for 20 minutes, maybe once in a while do a 10K or something, but not something I would do regularly. And it's okay. I think you have to do physical activity. I think marathon is a great way to get there if you like doing it. If you don't like doing it and you think it's a chore, don't do it. It's not something I would recommend to people, right? Because different people are different. Don't just think that just because many people do it, that you should also enjoy it and therefore do it. I think there are many other activities that you can do that you like that maybe will be more suited for you.
What about HIIT routines, exercise
Yeah,
routines?
it definitely works, right? And I think it is good to do it. But again, you can do it in many forms, right? Sometimes, you can do, whether you want to do it in a running form or a dancing form or you can have many ways of doing it. So I think, again, whatever you enjoy and you can sustain is what I would do, right? So it's not something that you do once in a while and then just leave it. I think HIIT is shown to have benefits, but how you do it can be different for different people.
Right. And of course, the big one that has got a lot of press, and it's also all over social media. Intermittent fasting. What is it, and does it work?
So it definitely works. Fasting works, right? But not for everyone. Again, that's another thing that is there. So, for instance, I do a 16-hour fast, and I think mostly my main meal is in the as lunch, and then I might have something. So, if I go out, it's not that I won't eat, because I think you don't want to be that person who's not enjoying the company of others. And if you're just sitting over there drinking water when everybody's having a good time, then that's not some who I am, because I think socialization is also part of adding to your longevity. Right? But what we found, for instance, my husband, who's genetically predisposed to having high triglycerides, and also was predisposed to not going well with statin. I think he was fine in his 40s. The moment he came to 50s, the triglycerides were high. And even though he's a marathon runner, he has done 2 full marathons, has done many half, eats very well, eats quite, was eating quite well on a regular basis. And initially used to laugh at me because I used to do fasting like for some time. I think what really helped him was 1 meal a day. So today he's the more bigger proponent. He actually really helps because his triglycerides have drastically come down. He doesn't need a statin or anything else. So I think that was really helpful for him. And therefore, I think for him, especially 1 meal a day really helped. I do intermittent. So basically I eat, at 1:30. I eat maybe a little bit in the evening if I feel like, or at least have some soup or something like that. And then again, I eat the next day. So I think I felt that really helps me in, one, keeping my calories in check. And two, I think it also helps a little bit in terms of changing some of your blood parameters also. But I think it doesn't work for everyone. And especially women, I think, have to be careful that not necessary that intermittent fasting will work for everyone.
Right. So now, let's come to the brass tacks. I mean, you throughout everywhere, whenever we've discussed different forms of biohacking, the one thing that you constantly told us is it's not for everyone. The other thing that you kept repeating is, don't try to do this on your own. You might need expert help for this. So, what are the precautions one must take when you want to do biohacking?
So I think, one is that if you are not measuring yourself on a regular basis, then you don't know what is going on inside, right? So I think that's a scary part, that maybe you're doing something just because you saw it on social media and you feel it is necessary for a long life, but it can actually cause severe damage to your systems, right? So I think if you are adding, especially I was mentioning like a lot of supplements, individually the supplements may be fine, but if you're taking like 20 of them or 100 of them, that can cause a burden to your liver or kidneys and so on. So I think you have to constantly be measuring that. So that would be one big precaution I would take if I was adding a lot of stuff to my body without checking what it's actually doing to it. The second thing is that I would also make sure that any of these new drugs that you take, that would be under some sort of a understanding that you are being the human guinea pig, and that some of these might not have been published with enough credibility, right? So it's not that no one has published anything, but it's just that if it hasn't been replicated in studies and enough people have done it, you are a human guinea pig, so you have to be careful about being one, and you have to take the downside of that as well, right? So if you are just expecting that biohacking will only give you upside without being careful about what you're doing, that can be a negative thing as well. But there are things that everybody can do, right? But if you're doing something where you are putting something in your mouth or on your skin, skin also goes into your bloodstream and into your body. So make sure that anything you add, whether it's for your skincare or anything else, you have to remember that food is also like medicine, right? So anything you put it inside your body, you are, you need to have enough evidence for it to make sure that you are, actually doing it right. Because Otherwise, you are taking it, it's at your own risk.
Right. So again, I'll circle back to something that you just mentioned, and I think that would be a great place to close this discussion on, which is what are the 5 very basic things you would ask someone to work on if they want to get started biohacking?
I think first is sleep, most important. And I can say this with experience. For 20 years, I slept very less. I was sleeping, 3, 4 hours and feeling great about myself. And even though it didn't sound like anything was wrong, I I made sure that that was the first thing I changed, and I think that's really helpful. The second thing is to understand just how you're wired, so you can tailor the rest of the things around you. So genetics is important to understand. The third is while stress, we say that it's how do you measure stress? Everybody has stress in their lives. I think you can measure. I think you can measure with a ring or a watch or any of the ways that you can. But I think if you are an experienced, person, you will also start to feel it, right? You can see the signs of when your body is stressed, and I think that could be recognizing what causes stress in your body is an important part of how do you then counter it, right? Whether it's through mindfulness or exercise or breathing or anything. Breathing is very easy for most people to be able to do if they want to do it, and it's free. So I think most good things are free. Drinking water is free. Sleeping is free. Only thing is air quality. If you're in a place like Delhi, you get a purifier wherever possible. And there are, how many did we do? 4, right?
Yeah, we did 4. I think sunlight is another thing that you mentioned.
Sunlight is an important thing, right? Being outside, doing some physical activity, any form that you love, I think would be a good thing to do.
Well, that's a great place to end this conversation. Like Anu told us, most of the things that we actually need to biohack our lives, they are free of cost. For everything else where you're paying money, ensure that you do your research, ensure that you are done your homework and you're speaking to an expert, especially if you have any doubts. And most importantly, learn how to listen to our body. And that is where mindfulness comes in. And of course, have fun doing it, because unless you have fun doing it, you will not be able to sustain whatever you started doing. Thank you very much, Anuradha, for joining us. This is a very, very interesting discussion, especially for those of us who are getting started on our path to longevity and would like to optimize our health so that, we can live healthier for longer. And that is essentially also what we are trying to do through the longevity shot and through Never Too Late. Have these conversations so all of us can learn from experts and benefit from them. So if you want to know more about living healthier for longer and get access to resources that are available in India, make sure you subscribe to the Never Too Late channel and also keep watching the Longevity Shot. Thank you. See you around.